Joshua Dean's family says this all happened very quickly. He was wrongfully terminated.
The story they gave was that he committed suicide. But is that really what happened?
Imagine uncovering a dark secret that powerful entities have desperately tried to keep hidden. You find yourself standing on the precipice of truth, ready to expose corruption and injustice that could save lives and change the world. Many have stood in this position before, only to meet a mysterious end. Falling from windows, succumbing to poison, or somehow committing suicide with 2 shots to the head. Let's explore the most mysterious ways whistleblowers have died while we try to uncover who is capable of hiding such obvious acts of foul play in plain sight. Number 13. Gary Webb. In 1996, journalist Gary Webb wrote a series of articles showing a link between the CIA and crack cocaine sold in South Central Los Angeles during the 1980s. His Dark Alliance series shocked the country, but the government denied the claims and other media criticized Webb's work as flawed. Years later, it was confirmed that Webb's findings were accurate. Gary Webb was born on August 31, 1955, in Corona, California. His father was a Marine Corps sergeant, so the family moved often. At 19, Webb lived in Ohio, attended Northern Kentucky State University, and wrote for the school newspaper. He became the paper's entertainment writer and editor, but was passionate about investigative journalism. Before graduating, he left school to work for the Kentucky Post and the Cleveland Plain Dealer, building a reputation for exposing local corruption. In the mid-1980s, Webb moved back to California and joined the Mercury News in San Jose. He focused on America's war on drugs and government misconduct. In 1995, while investigating a law allowing police to seize property from suspected drug dealers, Webb found a bigger story involving cocaine dealer Danilo Blandon. Blandon, a major cocaine dealer in Los Angeles in the early 1980s, was linked to the Contras, a Nicaraguan guerrilla army backed by the CIA. Webb found that Blandon and his associates sold large amounts of cocaine in Los Angeles to fund the Contras. Blandon testified that he sold cocaine in Los Angeles ghettos to support the Contras, not for personal gain. Webb published his findings in the Dark Alliance series in 1996, causing a public uproar. The CIA denied involvement and critics attacked Webb's work. Despite this, Webb stood by his reporting, clarifying that he never claimed CIA agents were directly dealing drugs, but that CIA-backed Contras were involved in drug trafficking. The backlash was severe. Webb's editors distanced themselves from the story and eventually published an apology. Webb's career suffered, and he faced financial and personal difficulties. In 1998, Webb published a book, Dark Alliance, the CIA, the Contras, and the crack cocaine explosion, with more evidence supporting his claims. The CIA admitted to having relationships with drug traffickers linked to the Contras, but gave Webb little vindication. He continued to face challenges until his death in 2004. On December 10, 2004, Gary Webb was found dead with 2 gunshot wounds to the head. The coroner ruled it a suicide. Webb's ex-wife, Susan Bell, believed he took his own life due to his long-standing unhappiness and financial difficulties, while many believed he was murdered. After his death, a collection of Webb's stories, edited by his son Eric, was published under the title The Killing Game, Selected Stories from the Author of Dark Alliance. Number 12. Joshua Dean. In October 2022, Dean found a major flaw in parts for the 737 MAX and reported it to top management, but claimed no one took action. He was fired in April 2023 for allegedly missing another issue that delayed deliveries. After his firing, Spirit AeroSystems found the same flaw Dean had previously reported. He then filed a safety complaint with the FAA, accusing Spirit of hiding the defect. Dean also filed a lawsuit alleging wrongful termination and misconduct by Spirit's senior managers. He told NPR in January that his firing was meant to silence other employees who might speak out. Dean used to work for Spirit AeroSystems, the company that makes critical parts for Boeing, like the fuselage. He said he was fired for pointing out the company's poor standards at their Wichita, Kansas plant. Dean started at Spirit in 2019 after getting his degree in mechanical engineering, but was laid off in 2020 due to the pandemic. He was rehired in 2021 as a quality auditor. Spirit Aerosystems denies the allegations, saying they are being contested in court. Spirit Aerosystems has faced criticism after a door panel fell off a 737 MAX 9 in midair in January. Concerns about Boeing's safety standards have grown following several incidents, including a near disaster involving Alaska Airlines, Flight 1282, which is under investigation. Living in Wichita, Kansas, Dean was 45 years old. His aunt, Carol Parsol, said he suddenly got sick and was taken to the hospital with breathing problems. He had a serious bacterial infection and pneumonia, needing constant intubation. His condition worsened, and he was put on an ECMO machine, a type of life support. Dean also needed dialysis and various medications. His mother shared on social media that a CT scan showed he might have had a stroke while fighting for his life. Dean's death was announced on May 30, 2023, nearly 2 months after another Boeing whistleblower, John Barnett, passed away from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Dean's aunt described his death as heartbreaking and brutal. His lawyer, Brian Knowles, called it a loss to the aviation community and the flying public, praising Dean for always standing up for safety and quality as the family awaited the autopsy. Knowles emphasized that aviation companies should support whistleblowers who raise safety concerns. In a statement after Dean's death, a Spirit spokesperson expressed condolences to his family and called the news stunning. Number 11. Frank Olson. Frank Olson was an American scientist, specializing in bacteria and biological warfare. Born in 1910 to Swedish immigrants in Hurley, Wisconsin. To help pay for college, Olson joined the Reserve Officers Training Corps, ROTC, and was called to active duty at Fort Hood, Texas, during World War II. After being discharged from the Army in 1944, Olson continued his research at Fort Detrick as a civilian. Olson's career took a dark turn as he became deeply involved with the CIA's covert operations, including Project Artichoke, an experimental interrogation program. By 1953, he had become the acting chief of the Special Operations Division, SOD, at Detrick, dealing with chemical and biological warfare research. The gruesome nature of his work, which included witnessing torture and experimenting on animals, took a toll on his mental health. In November 1953, Olson attended a retreat where he was unknowingly dosed with LSD by CIA chemist Sidney Gottlieb. This experience left him deeply disturbed. He returned home worried and confused, eventually seeking psychiatric help. On November 28, 1953, Olson died after falling from a hotel window in New York City. Initially ruled a suicide, his death later raised suspicions of foul play, especially after it was revealed that he had been drugged by the CIA. Olson's family struggled for years to uncover the truth about his death. In 1975, the Rockefeller Commission revealed some of the CIA's secret activities, leading to a government apology and a financial settlement with the Olson family. However, the family continued to seek more information, leading to further investigations and exhumations. In 1994, a second autopsy suggested Olson might have been murdered, although no conclusive evidence was found. In 2012, Olson's sons filed a lawsuit seeking more details about their father's death, but the case was dismissed in 2013 due to a prior settlement. Despite this, the family's quest for answers continues to this day, fueled by suspicions of CIA involvement in Frank Olson's tragic end. Number 10. Danny Calaro. Joseph Daniel Calaro was born on June 16, 1947. Before he died, he claimed he was about to expose a big conspiracy involving the Inslaw case, Iran-Contra, the October surprise, and the end of BCCI. Danny was a persistent journalist and tech enthusiast, always searching for the truth. His research led him to the Inslaw case, where a small software company accused the Department of Justice of stealing their software, Promise. As Danny dug deeper, he found links to other major scandals, such as the Iran-Contra affair and the collapse of a notorious bank. He began to think these were all part of a huge conspiracy involving corrupt officials, secretive intelligence agencies, and global criminal networks, which he called the Octopus. One important person in this conspiracy was Michael Riconosciuto, a scientist with a dubious past. Riconosciuto claimed the government had stolen and altered the Promise software to spy on foreign governments. Danny started receiving threatening phone calls. On August 9, 1991, just 2 days before his body was found, Danny had lunch, met with an engineer, and was later seen alone, looking depressed. He told someone at the inn he was there to meet an important source. That night, after being stood up, he was last seen buying coffee. On August 10, 1991, hotel staff discovered Danny Calaro naked in the bathtub of room 517 with deep cuts on his wrists. The scene was so disturbing that one housekeeper fainted. Beneath his body, paramedics found an empty beer can, 2 trash bags, and a razor blade. A half-empty wine bottle was also nearby. The rest of the room was tidy. On the desk was a legal pad with a torn page containing a sad note apologizing to his loved ones, especially his son, and asking for forgiveness. Based on this note, the lack of struggle, no forced entry, and alcohol, the police quickly ruled it a suicide. They found more razor blades in a small package and learned from interviews that no one saw or heard anything unusual. Authorities in Fairfax, Virginia, were notified to inform Calaro's family. An autopsy on August 14 showed he died from blood loss. 5 months later, a second autopsy also ruled it a suicide, finding traces of antidepressants, acetaminophen, and alcohol in his system. Further investigations revealed that the FBI misled Congress about the case. Some agents questioned the suicide ruling and suggested further investigation. Some FBI files on Calaro were kept from the public, and later, through a Freedom of Information Act request, new details surfaced indicating someone else had visited Calaro's hotel room that night. Number 9. John Wheeler. John Wheeler, also known as Jack Wheeler, was born on December 14, 1944, in Laredo, Texas. One of his big achievements was helping build the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. He led the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund from 1979 to 1989. Wheeler also worked with President George H.W. Bush on environmental projects, led the Deafness Research Foundation, and advised the Air Force. He was involved with the Vietnam Children's Fund and Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Wheeler was known for his odd habits and forgetfulness. In 2004, he was hospitalized for a manic episode. Before his death, he seemed confused, possibly due to heart problems, stress, or medication issues. Authorities have ruled his death a homicide, but it's unclear if he was killed by a random stranger or if it was politically motivated. On December 28, someone resembling Wheeler threw smoke bombs into a house under construction near his home in Newcastle. Wheeler's phone was later found in that house, though police haven't confirmed this. His last email to his family was sent on the morning of December 29 from a different phone. On December 29, Wheeler was spotted in a Delaware courthouse parking garage, acting disoriented and wearing just one shoe. He told the attendant he wanted to warm up before paying, even though his car was far away. He also claimed his briefcase was stolen and insisted he wasn't drunk. He looked odd to the attendant. Later, Wheeler asked his pharmacist for a ride to the Wilmington train station, looking upset. The pharmacist offered to call a cab, but Wheeler left the store instead. Friends got worried on December 30 when he didn't send his usual emails, especially after an Army football game he would have been interested in. That morning, Wheeler's Newcastle house was a mess, with items moved but nothing stolen. He bought coffee at a Subway in Wilmington, paying with loose cash and dressed in dirty clothes without a coat. He also visited a law office where security footage showed him trying to hide his face. On December 31, Wheeler's body was found at the Cherry Island landfill in Newark, about 13 miles from Newcastle. On January 28, 2011, the Delaware State Medical Examiner reported that Wheeler died from assault and blunt force trauma. Number 8. Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a billionaire living it up with high-powered pals, including presidents and royalty. Yet he met a lonely end in a New York prison cell under suspicious circumstances. Epstein was notorious for his horrifying crimes, using his wealth and connections to prey on young girls. Epstein started his career as a teacher before moving to finance, quickly rising through the ranks to partner at Bear Stearns in just 4 years. He later created his firm. By the early 90s, Epstein was a fixture in New York's nightlife, hosting glamorous parties with celebrities, politicians, and even presidents like Donald Trump and Bill Clinton. Trump once called Epstein a terrific guy who liked beautiful women, often on the younger side. However, Trump later distanced himself, claiming he had thrown Epstein out of a club years ago. Bill Clinton had a closer connection, with flight logs showing he took 27 trips on Epstein's private plane, though his spokesperson downplayed the number. Prince Andrew, the Queen's second son, was another high-profile friend. He was seen with Epstein in New York and reportedly attended events on Epstein's private island. Accusations emerged that Andrew inappropriately touched a woman at Epstein's home, which he strongly denies. Epstein even helped Andrew's ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, pay off her debts. In 2008, Epstein's evil activities came to light when he was accused of running a sexual pyramid scheme involving young girls in Florida. He offered cash for massages that led to sexual abuse, creating a network of victims. Despite overwhelming evidence, Epstein struck a controversial plea deal, serving just 13 months in a comfortable prison arrangement. This deal also granted immunity to potential co-conspirators and prevented victims from challenging it. In July 2019, Epstein was arrested again on federal charges of sex trafficking minors, reigniting public outrage. Authorities found lewd photos of underage girls and large sums of cash in his home. More victims came forward with harrowing stories, including Virginia Giuffre, who claimed she was forced to have sex with Epstein's powerful friends, including Prince Andrew. Epstein's death in prison, ruled a suicide, sparked many conspiracy theories given his connections to many powerful individuals. Investigations revealed lapses in his supervision, with guards falsifying logs and Epstein being taken off suicide watch. His death denied his victims the chance to see him face justice in court. Number 7. Gareth Williams. Gareth Williams was from Valley Anglesey, Wales. Williams rented a room in Prestbury, Gloucestershire, for nearly a decade. Known as a private man and an avid cyclist, he was supposed to return to Cheltenham on September 2010 after his vacation. On August 23, 2010, police checked on him at his home after he had been out of contact for several days. They found his naked, decaying body in a locked sports bag in the bath. The keys to the lock were inside the bag. His flat at 36 Alderney Street, Pimlico, was declared a crime scene. Williams's family claimed important DNA was tampered with and fingerprints were removed. DNA from at least 2 other people was found on the bag, but no signs of forced entry were detected. Scotland Yard found no evidence of Williams' fingerprints on the locker bath, hinting at third-party involvement. Williams was buried on September 26, 2010, in Valley Anglesey after a private funeral. Soon after, intelligence and police leaders met to manage the investigation. Given the secret nature of Williams' work, Williams had recently worked with the NSA and FBI, and the U.S. requested that his work details be kept confidential. Coroner Fiona Wilcox found no injuries or signs of struggle on Williams' body, which was also free of alcohol and drugs. The police deemed his death suspicious and unexplained. In December 2010, police revealed Williams had occasionally visited bondage websites, but wasn't obsessed with it. His landlord had found him tied to his bedpost 3 years earlier. Williams said he was testing if he could free himself. Experts concluded Williams couldn't have locked himself in the bag. The flat's heating was on, speeding up body decay. The police sought 2 people seen entering Williams' home in June or July 2010. Williams' family believed another person was involved in his death. DNA on Williams' hand was later identified as contaminated by a forensic scientist. Evidence suggested it was nearly impossible for Williams to have locked himself in the bag. 2 experts tried 400 times and failed, though one admitted a slight chance Williams managed it. Coroner Wilcox found Williams's death to be likely criminal, but lacked enough evidence for a verdict of unlawful killing. She criticized SIS for not reporting Williams missing sooner, which led to the loss of forensic evidence. The Metropolitan Police later reinvestigated, but concluded that Williams likely died accidentally. In 2015, a former KGB agent claimed Russian intelligence killed Williams after failing to recruit him as a double agent. A 2024 police review found no new DNA evidence or signs of third-party involvement at the time of his death. Number 6. Karen Silkwood. Karen Silkwood wasn't your typical hero in the nuclear power industry. She became increasingly concerned about the dangerous conditions at the Kerr-McGee plant, which processed plutonium, a highly radioactive substance used in nuclear weapons. As a member of the oil, Chemical, and Atomic Workers Union, she was determined to reveal the unsafe practices, putting both workers and the community at risk. Before her activism, Silkwood led a different life. Born in Longview, Texas, and raised in Netherlands, her new chapter at the Kerr-McGee Cimarron Fuel Fabrication Site in Crescent, Oklahoma, began in 1972. Silkwood quickly became a force for change, joining the local union and participating in a strike. Silkwood's investigation revealed shocking violations, unsafe worker exposure, faulty equipment, and poor storage practices. She also highlighted inadequate shower facilities that increased contamination risks. The union supported her claims, saying the plant was producing defective fuel rods and falsifying inspection records. In the summer of 1974, Silkwood testified before the Atomic Energy Commission, revealing her contamination and accusing the plant of compromising safety standards to increase production. On November 5, 1974, she found her body contained nearly 400 times the legal limit of plutonium contamination. Despite attempts to decontaminate, the source of the contamination remained unclear. The next day, as she prepared for a union meeting, Silkwood tested positive for plutonium again. She was thoroughly decontaminated, but traces of plutonium were found at her home, leading to its destruction. Silkwood and her associates were tested at Los Alamos National Laboratory, but the source of her contamination remained a mystery. Kerr-McGee claims Silkwood had contaminated herself to harm the company's reputation. On November 13, 1974, as Silkwood drove to meet a New York Times reporter, her car crashed, killing her. The absence of a crucial folder with evidence against Kerr-McGee from the crash site fueled suspicions. Officially, her death was ruled an accident, but many believed it was foul play to silence her. The Silkwood case sparked a major legal battle. In 1979, the family won a large settlement, but many questions remain. Silkwood's death continues to intrigue and inspire, leaving a mystery about whether her efforts to expose safety violations led to her death. Number 5. Michael Rupert. Michael Rupert was born on February 3, 1951, in Washington, D.C. His father, Ernest Rupert III, had been a pilot in World War II and later worked with Martin Marietta, acting as a link between the company, the CIA, and the Air Force. Rupert's mother, Madeline, was a codebreaker at the NSA, decoding Soviet messages to track their nuclear scientists. Rupert began working with the LAPD in 1973, focusing on drug investigations in high-risk areas. By 1976, he discovered what he believed was a major drug network, possibly involving the U.S. military and LAPD. He left the force in 1978. On November 15, 1996, Rupert confronted CIA Director John Deutsch at a town hall meeting, claiming CIA involvement in drug trafficking based on his LAPD experience. He later became an investigative journalist and started From the Wilderness, a publication dedicated to exposing government corruption. Rupert wrote Crossing the Rubicon, The Decline of the American Empire at the End of the Age of Oil, published in September 2004. The book suggests that high-level figures, including Vice President Dick Cheney, were aware of and involved in the 9/11 attacks. Rupert also predicted the 2008 financial crisis 3 years before it happened. From the Wilderness was a newsletter from 1998 to 2006, covering political and governmental issues. Rupert ended the publication in 2006, citing health issues, technical problems, and his move to Venezuela. During this time, he faced legal and harassment claims from a former employee, which he denied. In early 2010, he started the Collapse Network to promote sustainable living. He moved to Sonoma County in 2011, believing it would be safer in case of societal collapse. He left the Collapse Network in 2012, passing it to Jenna Orkin, but continued to contribute occasionally. Rupert was found dead on April 13, 2014, in Napa County, California, from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. His death was confirmed by his friend and landlord, Jack Martin, who also found Rupert's body in suicide note. Number 4, Dr. David Kelly. Dr. Kelly, a well-known weapons expert, became very sad after the British government revealed he was the source of an important BBC report. Feeling betrayed and chased by the media, he sadly took his own life. Dr. Kelly was a top expert on biological and chemical weapons. having worked for both the British government and the UN. He had been to Iraq 37 times, looking for weapons of mass destruction, WMD. He thought Saddam Hussein was hiding these weapons. A year before, the British government put out a report saying Iraq could use WMDs within 45 minutes. But many didn't believe this, thinking Tony Blair's aide Alastair Campbell made the threat seem bigger to get support for the Iraq War. BBC journalist Andrew Gilligan added to the problem by saying the government put false information into the report. Dr. Kelly, not sure he was the source, told his bosses that he had spoken to Gilligan. The government then leaked Kelly's name to the press. A friend of Kelly didn't believe Gilligan's claims, thinking the journalist might have twisted Kelly's words. Kelly had mixed feelings about the war. He didn't fully support Tony Blair and liked a UN-led approach better, thinking the inspectors could do their job with enough diplomatic support. Blair and the British government, accused of lying by the BBC, ordered a parliamentary investigation. Dr. Kelly was a key witness and faced intense questioning in televised hearings, which many believe led to his suicide. A few days after the hearings, Dr. Kelly was found dead at home, having taken painkillers and cut his wrists. Tony Blair, who heard the news in Hong Kong, expressed deep sadness and called for an independent investigation, led by Judge Lord Hutton. When Blair was called to the investigation, he faced protests and accusations of acting like a president and going to war without full support. The controversy hit Blair's close team hard, leading to the resignation of his top advisor, Alastair Campbell, who was seen as the creator of Blair's media strategy. Number 3, Barry Jennings. In 2001, Barry Jennings was the Deputy Director of Emergency Services for the New York City Housing Authority. On the morning of 9/11, after the first plane hit the North Tower at 8:46 a.m., Jennings and Corporation Counsel Michael Hess were called to the city's Office of Emergency Management in World Trade Center Building 7, WTC 7, to help with the emergency response. They arrived before the second plane hit the South Tower at 9:03 a.m. and found the office deserted. Jennings received a call warning him to leave immediately. As they headed down the stairs, an explosion threw them back to the 8th floor, trapping them. After hours of chaos and several attempts to get help, firefighters finally rescued them. Jennings' account was captured on camera by Jeff Rawson of WABC TV shortly after his rescue. Years later, Dylan Avery and Jason Burmis, creators of the documentary Loose Change, found this footage. Jennings' story became one of the few eyewitness accounts of the mysterious collapse of WTC 7. Jennings' testimony is crucial because it contradicts the official explanation. He described explosions inside the building, which NIST denied happened. Jennings' vivid descriptions challenged NIST's claim that no explosions occurred. The BBC's Conspiracy Files program suggested the explosions Jennings heard were debris from the Twin Towers, but Jennings insisted he saw both towers standing after the explosions. Jennings' story suggests possible pre-planted explosives in WTC 7. The 9/11 Commission briefly interviewed Jennings in private, but never followed up, and their final report didn't mention WTC 7's collapse. NIST took 7 years to release their report, which many found unconvincing. Barry Jennings' personal views on the collapse and the official explanations were never fully explored. After a clip of his interview was released, his job was threatened, and he requested not to be included in Loose Change Final Cut. He was unhappy with how his story was portrayed by the BBC. Tragically, in September 2008, as NIST was releasing its final report, Jennings passed away in the hospital. Dylan Avery hired a private investigator to look into Jennings' death, but the investigator eventually referred the case to the police and refunded Avery's fee, refusing further contact. To this day, no official cause or time of Jennings' death has been made public. Number 2, Sergey Magnitsky. Sergey Magnitsky was an auditor at the Moscow law firm Firestone Duncan, working for owner Jameson Firestone. He helped Firestone Duncan's client, Hermitage Capital Management, an investment firm accused of tax fraud by the Russian Interior Ministry. Hermitage often exposed corruption in Russian state-owned businesses. Its co-founder, American Bill Browder, was expelled from Russia in 2005 as a supposed threat. Browder believed his expulsion was to exploit his company. In June 2007, Hermitage's Moscow office and Firestone Duncan's offices were raided by Interior Ministry officers. The search warrant, allegedly underpaid taxes, was questionable since tax authorities had confirmed overpayment. The officers seized all corporate and tax documents, not just those related to the specific company named in the warrant. Browder later learned of a mysterious court case against one of his companies for unpaid debts which he knew nothing about. Magnitsky was tasked with investigating. Magnitsky discovered that the seized documents were used by criminals, with police help, to take over 3 Hermitage companies and steal $230 million in taxes. He claimed the police accused Hermitage of tax evasion to justify the raids and steal the documents. His investigation pointed to corruption involving police, judges, tax officials, bankers, and the Russian mafia. Despite initial skepticism, his claims were later confirmed, though he became a target of investigation by those he had implicated. Magnitsky found the stolen documents were used to forge ownership changes and falsely claim Hermitage owed money to shell companies. The new owner was a convicted murderer. The fake debt justified a $230 million tax refund issued on Christmas Eve 2007. Hermitage reported these findings to the Russian government, but instead of investigating the thieves, authorities charged Magnitsky with collusion. He was arrested on November 2008 and held without trial for 11 months in poor conditions. Denied proper medical treatment for serious health issues, he died on November 16, 2009, 8 days before his required release. His death, initially attributed to natural causes, was later linked to beatings and torture. An independent commission confirmed he faced psychological and physical pressure. President Medvedev ordered an investigation, resulting in the firing of 20 senior prison officials. In 2012, 2 prison doctors were charged with negligence in his death, but no high-ranking officials were held accountable. In 2011, Russian authorities admitted prison negligence in his death and opened criminal cases against the doctors involved. In 2013, a Moscow court posthumously convicted Magnitsky of tax evasion. Investigations traced stolen funds to real estate investments in New York, and the U.S. Justice Department moved to seize the properties. A 2016 investigation revealed widespread fraud involving high-ranking Russian officials, but only low-ranking officers were convicted. Relations with the EU worsened, and Russia promoted a narrative blaming Browder and Magnitsky for the fraud. In 2017, Magnitsky's lawyer, Nikolai Gorokov, was severely injured in a suspicious fall from his apartment building. Number 1. Alexander Perapilishny. Alexander Perapilishny was a Russian businessman and whistleblower who passed away while jogging near London in 2012 after fleeing Russia in 2009. Back in December 2007, Perapilishny's company, Quartel Trading, agreed to buy over $3 million worth of furniture from Balak Ventures, owned by Isa Al-Zaidi, a Russian of Syrian descent who was sanctioned by the U.S. in 2014 for his ties to a Syrian research center. Perapilishny moved to the UK in 2009, and in 2010, he gave Swiss prosecutors documents exposing senior Russian officials' involvement in the $230 million fraud, a case that gained international attention after lawyer Sergey Magnitsky's death. On November 10, 2012, Perapilishny returned to the UK from Paris, went for a jog in St. George's Hill, and was found dead by a neighbor. Despite having no known health problems, autopsies and advanced toxicology tests couldn't determine the cause of death. However, tests later found a toxin from the Chinese plant Gelsemium in his stomach, known to cause heart failure. A British heart specialist suggested he likely died of natural causes, though rumors swirled that he was murdered to hide a $230 million theft from the Russian treasury. Surrey police lawyer Fiona Barton maintained that no identifiable toxin was found. Shortly after his death, the British press reported that Perapilishny was on a hit list related to the Russian treasury theft. Jeffrey Robertson QC, representing the fraud investigation company, claimed Perapilishny might have been in contact with British security services before his death and accused authorities of a cover-up. In 2017, unconfirmed reports suggested that U.S. intelligence informed M16 that Perapilishny was likely assassinated on orders from Putin or his close associates. A U.S. intelligence report to Congress confidently stated that Russian officials ordered the hit. In 2018, The Canadian newspaper The Globe and Mail reported that French police were investigating Palish's death as a probable assassination. Which of these shocking whistleblowers' unsolved deaths did you find the most intriguing? Let us know your answer in the comments section.